Welcome to another Answered by Alva. Now, I remembered that I promised you that I would have a forum where it is entitled Pre-Planning and the Importance of Pre-Planning. And as promised, I have tonight with us an attorney. I have Naomi Jean-Philippe from Jean-Philippe Law Firm. And I have Rudy Souffrant, who works with a financial services company. And tonight, we are just talking and being real about the importance of pre-planning, the importance of putting your house in order so that, your family doesn't have to suffer with any burdens or anything like that. So yes, tonight, as I told you, my last seminar that I did, I was talking about a young man who wrote to his deceased mom, when he said, "Mom, I wish you could come back to see the mess that you made." So that was a very impactful statement. So, I see it every day in the funeral industry how the lack of pre-planning hurts even more than the death. And I want us to do better. So I'm providing information tonight. I have professionals who set aside their precious time to, give some information. So without further ado, we will have Miss Naomi. So Naomi, I just want you to introduce yourself.
So as you said, Ms. Alva, my name is Naomi Jean-Philippe. I am the founder of the Jean-Philippe Law Firm located in New York City. And we also do serve Georgia as well. I started my practice initially for an entirely different reason than what I'm doing now. Now what I do is I serve families as well as businesses in helping them, as you said, to get their life in order and to actually pass on the things that they work so hard for during their lives, which is something that I think a lot of people take for granted. I think a lot of the times we assume, oh, my husband's going to get what I have, or my kids are going to get what I have. And it doesn't exactly work that way in most cases. And it's not immediate. It's not something that just happens, especially if there are, properties, as well as, accounts, investments, things like that, with no one named as a beneficiary. It becomes a little bit more challenging because things go through the court process. And unfortunately for me, I kind of learned this the hard way when my dad passed away. And even though, he was a school teacher, I saw that, we paid estate taxes, we had to pay for the probate process. It took years before everything was finally settled. So I really wanted to teach people that when you're creating a legacy for yourself and for your family, you have to do the planning in order for that to actually transfer to the people that you love.
Oh, nice. So Naomi, I'm an only child. You're saying that if God forbid, and my mom was to pass, everything do not automatically go to me?
Well, it doesn't work instantaneously in most situations. Typically what happens is when someone passes away, there is a court process by way of passing your assets on to the people that you love. Does everyone go through this court process? No, it depends on what you have in assets. Let's say, for example, all you own is a car and a bank account. Chances are that in order to get access to that car, you won't need to go through probate. If in order to get access to that bank account, if there's no beneficiary names on the bank account, you're gonna have to go through the court process in order to get access to that bank account. You can't just go to the bank and say, hey, my mom died, I'm her only child. They're not just gonna give you access to the bank account. The same goes for real estate and investment accounts, stocks, brokerage accounts. If there's no beneficiary names on these items, then you'll have to go through the court process in order to be able to get access to that. That costs money and it takes time, and you're already dealing with a stressful situation. So the goal is to help others understand that that can be avoided. You just have to plan for it.
Thank you so much for that information. So Naomi, what would it entail to set things up in terms of legally? What is the process? Because sometimes these processes seem overwhelming. Like if I have property and I want to make sure to put things in order, how would I get started?
I think the first thing a lot of people fail to do is take inventory of everything that you have. Sometimes people don't do the planning because they say, well, I don't have that much. But it's not about what you have. I think it's more so about who you have. If you have people that you care about and you want to make sure that you're making their lives easier if something were to happen to you, it just takes a little bit of planning in order to do that. It usually doesn't cost a lot of money to get a plan in place. A lot of the times people delay getting their estate plan because they think I don't have anything. So the first place I think is to start with making an inventory of what you do own, that you care about, that you want to make sure it goes to your loved ones. So if you own a house, bank accounts, insurance accounts, like such as life insurance, retirement accounts, all of those things you want to make sure that you're taking inventory of and you're keeping a running, some running document, because just having them doesn't mean that your kids are going to get it if they don't know about it. A lot of the times what happens is no one knows about that bank account or about that life insurance, about whatever the asset is, and then it gets left to the State Department of Unclaimed Funds and no one knows that it's there. So having the asset doesn't mean anything if no one else knows about it.
I could definitely relate to that in terms of, seeing my clients experience a death, and then, they're presented with the funeral bill, and I asked them, did mom or did dad have insurance? And they're like, they think so. And sometimes they go looking into the home and they cannot locate a policy. They knew that the mother had a bank account, but they don't know where. Even if they have insurance, they don't know who the beneficiary is. They don't know if there's a pension on the job, so it's very, very important to have a conversation. When you said, I wrote down the note, inventory, find someone you trust and tell them what you have. You don't have to tell them the amounts, right? But tell them, at least if something happened to me, this is where I have my stuff. I see it all the time. Thank you for that. And I always hear about wills and trusts. What is the difference?
So they're both wills and trusts are different ways of you transferring your assets to your loved ones. The difference between a will and a trust, there are many differences, but the main difference is that a will only really takes effect once you pass away. While you're alive, the will is really just a piece of paper. It doesn't really mean much, doesn't really have much of an effect, and you could change it as often as you want to. But once you pass away, that's when your will becomes effective. A trust, on the other hand, is very flexible, and there are different types of trusts, and it does allow for you leaving your assets to people at different times. So ages and stages is what we call it. So let's say, for example, you only want your oldest daughter to be able to manage and take ownership of your home when she becomes 25, and only if she gets married, for example. That is something you can do with a trust. You cannot do that with a will. So that's one of the main differences. The biggest difference that I think most people appreciate versus between a will versus a trust is that a trust allows you to avoid the probate process if it is put together properly. If your assets are transferred to the trust properly and all of your assets are transferred, then it does allow you to avoid the probate process. With that being said, like I said, there are different types of trusts. So you really want to sit with an attorney and determine whether or not a trust is for you, because I don't believe that a trust is for everyone. Estate planning is not one size fits all. So a trust may not be for you. Usually a trust is recommended if you own real estate, if you have minor children. There are just certain circumstances where you may want to consider a trust versus a will. Now with a will, as we mentioned, a lot of people really don't know this, but a will has to go through the probate process. So just having the will doesn't mean that you're automatically going to get your mom's house, for example. If your name is not listed on the house, in order for you to get access to that house, in order for you to get a deed with your name on it, it has to go through that court process called probate. And that court process typically takes time. In some cases, it takes years. In my case, it took years. There are some cases such as Prince, for example, where it took over 5 years. Michael Jackson. These sometimes it just takes time. And these are people who they're educated, they're successful, and they still just didn't know, they didn't have the knowledge to go out and seek something to leave their assets to their loved ones without it going through the court process. With that being said, it also does cost money. You usually have to hire a lawyer to go through the probate process. You usually have to pay filing fees. Sometimes you might have to pay for assessments and adjustments to the property. It really does depend on each case, but it is a pretty lengthy process and a pretty expensive process at a time where you're already stressed out. So the goal is to be able to avoid that process, especially since it's also a public process. Whenever something's filed in court, anyone can access it. So anyone can go in and look and see what assets were left to who, because it's in the court documents. Where a trust, because it's avoiding the court process, no one knows, it's a very private transfer, no one knows who got what, and everything can be transferred seamlessly.
Wow, that was some great information. Wow. So what I'm hearing you say is that it is expensive and time consuming not to do the right thing, not to put things in place. So with that being said, when is the right time to put things in place in terms of legally? Should I wait till I'm 18? Should I wait till I have a car? Should I wait till I have kids? When is the right time?
So I usually tell people that if you have a goal, if you already have assets that you know you want to make sure that they get left to a particular person, or they pass to the people that you want them to pass to, the idea is that once you have a goal, you work on your goal right away, right? You don't wait until the perfect time to start working on your goal. With that being said, some people, if you're in college, you might not think that, it's essential for you to have it because you don't really have many assets. Usually, once you have assets in your name, such as a bank account or stocks, investments, things like that, a home, or if you have minor children, because you also want to make sure you're naming a guardian for your children, which is something that a lot of people don't consider. You want to make sure that there's someone that you're naming to take care of your kids if you're no longer able to do so. And that might not just be just for death. It might also be in the event that you're no longer able to speak for yourself. So if you're incapacitated, whether it's temporary or permanent, you want to make sure that you're naming someone to care for your kids if you're not able to do so. So if you have minor children, I think it's a good time to get an estate plan. And if you have assets that you want to make sure that they get left to someone else. If you only got $5 in the bank account, there's probably no point. But if you have assets that you want to make sure that they go to your mom or your brother or your cousin or your kids or your husband or your wife or whoever it is, you want to make sure that you have those wishes written down. And you also want to make sure that the people that you're leaving these assets to, they know about it. Because I think that a lot of people, especially in our community, it's like top secret information. When the reality is like you're not helping, you're really hurting your family by not telling them what you have or where they can find your documents and assets. So I think that once you have assets or minor children, it's a good time to start considering putting your wishes down in writing.
Thank you. Thank you, Naomi. And my last question is, which I anticipate, is it expensive to set this up?
It's more expensive to not set it up. Because at the end of the day, what you're really doing is you're pushing it onto someone else. So for example, I thought that I'm sure my dad thought that he was leaving certain assets to his kids and to his wife, when in reality, we had to pay taxes on that. We had to pay attorneys, we had to pay filing fees. So a lot of what he thought he was leaving to his kids and to his family, it ended up going through to the state and to, the courts and things like that. So the reality is you're not really saving money by not doing the estate plan. You're just pushing it onto someone else.
Oh, thank you so much for that, Naomi. And can you give us, how can we reach you? How can we reach you to start this process?
Definitely. You can find me on lifelegacyplanner.com. I'm also a Life Legacy Planner on all platforms. And there's a contact me button that has all of my contact information there. You can book a consultation with me completely for free, and we can discuss whether or not it's the right time for you to get your estate plan.
Thank you. And yes, it was very easy getting in contact with you. I went on your website, I did that contact form, and lo and behold, the time came and we had that consultation. Thank you so much, Naomi, for all of that valuable information.